And welcome to the Watchful Penguin Podcast, episode 2.
Yeah.
Or is
Something
it
like that.
episode 1? Our
Uh,
preview of the first episode was a lot longer than a preview, so it could technically be an episode. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, the Watchful Penguin is back. Tyson and Veronica with you. Dustin Southworth alongside. Dustin, welcome
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, we're here. We're doing it. We're apparently ripping off the band-aids.
Ripping off the Band-Aids. I think that should be our just the Watchful Penguin slogan,
Yeah.
tagline.
Sure.
Rip the Band-Aid off. We'll just dive right in.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's just get into it.
Yeah, get into it. And with that, let's do, because we have a loaded show for you today. Super excited about our conversations with cool people. That's going to be coming up here in just a little bit. A good broadcast buddy of mine, Derek Beck, is going to be joining us alongside. He is heavily involved, if you will, in the country music industry and in country music radio, and he gives a small central Nebraska radio station the big Nashville sound, and it's one of the reasons that it is so popular, and he has got so many good opinions to share on the country music industry, and I cannot wait to talk with him here in just a little bit. Before we can get to any of that, before we get to stupid games that we actually played last night that we might play again because it was pretty fun and competitive, before we get to any of that, we got to get to our basics, the nuts and bolts of the Watchful Penguin podcast, and that is entirely based on two guys with glasses and nerdism. We're going to nerd out here, and I'm going to play this little segue. It's going to sound really cool on the audio version because we can't actually hear it, but it's going right now, and that means it's time for tech news, and that means it's time for Dustin. And let's start with tech news on the tech that we're using right now, Zoom. Video conferencing in the social distancing age has become insanely popular. What are you seeing with the latest and greatest trends, and how, quite frankly, are they keeping up with demand?
Well, it's very interesting what's going on with this whole segment of the population and the software development. Sorry, there's a cat running in front of me.
Work from home, they said. It'll be fun,
yeah,
they said.
Yeah. So I mean, talking about working from home, we're using Zoom. That's our application of choice. But you're seeing a lot of the big companies. I mean, they've all had video conferencing software for a while, but they are all making huge improvements to them right now. I mean, we just saw Google just opened up. They've had Hangouts in the past, which we've used for our old podcast, and they kind of got rid of a bunch of features and then locked some of the features behind what they call G Suite, which is the business version of Google applications. They actually just released that as they opened it up, so anybody with a Google account can use Meet, Google Meets, and you're seeing a lot of people use Microsoft Teams. That's a big one. To a smaller extent, Skype for Business is one that a lot of people use. I see a lot of problems with a lot of these. People have had problems working with some of these, like Skype. Every one of them has the limitations, but they're all improving because of the mass amounts of people that are having to use it and wanting to use these things. So I mean, Zoom is giving. I mean, you have 40 minutes for free generally. Occasionally, they'll give you extra time just because of they're getting massive amounts of people and they want people to stay on their platform, so they're giving away time for free because they know those will be future customers. And talking about Zoom, I mean, that's the one that everybody's talking about right now because it's blown up, and especially because it's used in schools. Like, I think that's why there's such a mass influx and so many articles being written about Zoom right now. They're like, everybody's talking about it because everybody's using it, and you have it on your laptop because you're a teacher or a student, and so you use that to talk to your friends. So that's why everybody's using it. But Zoom has made huge improvements since this whole thing has started. I mean, they've stopped all their major updates, and they're just focusing on the things that people are talking about, that the articles are being written about. So the very first thing, first thing that blew up was the fact that they used this a way to sign into Facebook. They wanted, like, their philosophy is to make it as simple as possible for people to get into a meeting and have a meeting and record it and whatever and have a video conference. So they wanted people to be able to sign in the easiest way possible. So they used a developer kit from Facebook, and people found out that, and which, I mean, it's, if you use this thing, everybody knows what it does. The developers know what it does. It sends a bunch of data to Facebook because that's what Facebook wants. They want all the data about what you're doing, what apps you're using. People started complaining about this, so they're like, all right, well, we can still have you be able to sign in through Facebook, but there's just a slightly more complicated way to do it. So they switched over to that because they wanted people to feel comfortable using their platform. So before, it would send all data to Facebook no matter if you've signed into Facebook or not. Now it only sends data, I mean, it only talks to Facebook if you're actually signing in through Facebook. So they made that was like their first major improvement. Then they had a bunch of people, because people are bored, so they're jumping around trying to find open meetings, and they're disrupting that. So one of the next things that they used to improve, they made it default to put passwords on the pod, or the meeting rooms. So that was a big improvement, and helped curb that a little bit. And I've read that they're doing a bunch of things to improve that and to block people from just like mass searching for meeting rooms. So they're making huge improvements because of this mass influx. And like I said, all of the big companies right now are improving their infrastructure and the way that they encrypt video and the way they handle it on the back end. Like, they're all making improvements to make better quality video just because of this mass influx of people and using their platforms.
But what made Zoom the go-to? There's hundreds of video conferencing services available. How did Zoom skyrocket to the one that everybody's using, and the one that you either A, got to know really quickly, or B, got left behind on?
Right. I mean, they've been around for quite a while. I mean, they've been quietly, I don't want to say in the background, but they've been quietly building up. And I mean, I first got introduced to it in a school system. So I mean, I think that's where they focused on school systems before. Like I said, Microsoft and Google, they're focused on big businesses. They're focused on the corporate world. But I mean, just like Apple in the 90s giving away, or giving computers away for really cheap to schools, it got a lot of people using Apple. So now you're seeing kind of the same thing with Zoom. All the kids have it on their laptop, all the teachers have to have it. So then that makes all their friends download it, all their family download it. That's why Zoom is blowing up right now, because everybody has it on their laptop already. So they're like, I'm just going to use that, and I'm going to make my friends and family use that as well. So that's where, I mean, they were smart. I mean, obviously they didn't predict this happening, but it was smart to get it in the schools. Like I said, I mean, that's kind of why so many people have Apple computers, and why they kind of blew up and are big in the PC world, because they got it in the schools and people learned on a Mac, and that's just what they stick with. You just kind of stick with what you learn. So that's where they're how they blew up, really. I mean, that's why we're seeing it now.
So many of us are anxious to talk about the post-COVID-19 world and what happens when we can all social undistance and see each other again. What happens with video conferencing, where does it go in a post COVID-19 world?
I mean, that's a good question, but I think another part of that is I think we're seeing how. I mean, obviously there are infrastructure changes that we need to make in the United States, internet wise and well, billing wise. To be honest, it's more about billing than actually the infrastructure. But I think we're seeing, and I think companies are seeing, and managers are seeing how much more productive people are at home actually. So I think it's, I mean, I think the video conferencing is going to be, they're going to blow up. They're going to kind of stay at a higher level because you're going to see companies that say, all right, we know you're more productive, so we're going to give you 3 days a week at home, come in 2 days a week for meetings, for like in-person meetings, something like that, or manager reviews or whatever. They'll have you come in for that, but they're gonna. I think corporations are going to move more to a work from home scenario in general, just because they're seeing. I mean, they're getting a lot of data right now. Maybe we don't know the. I mean, I think they've definitely said that they're showing that there's more productivity when you're at home, when you can take a break and go grab something that you need it while you're in your house, and then come back and you're way more productive. So I think they're getting all that data to kind of show that, and I think it's gonna change the world. I mean, this thing, I think we were moving towards that anyway, but I think this just kind of accelerated it. I mean, it's going to give IT people a lot more work to do, but to get this all sort situated and worked out. But I think that's where we're going, because I mean, they're going to see, they're going to have less rent, they're going to have less electricity for these corporations to cover their costs. So they're
Sure.
going to push, they're going to want to make people work from home more, because they're going to save a ton of money.
There wasn't no there weren't a lot of companies up until the peak of COVID-19 that were willing to be the guinea pigs,
Right.
and to see if this working from home environment would be suitable for their company, because it was and has been for the longest time kind of a taboo topic, and there isn't a lot of like managers. I think the general feel is if you're working from home, you're going to be less productive because you're just going to do your stuff around the house. But what
Right.
we're seeing is you got a project with a deadline and you want to get paid, you're going to do it,
Yep.
regardless.
Yeah.
So the productivity thing has actually been an interesting side note on all of this as we're seeing all of this data. And granted, there's still going to be a lot to go through. I don't think it's going to be that instantaneous flash. Okay, COVID-19's over. Oh, but we're still all going to work from home because we found all this data. It's going to be
Right.
years to go through and mine it all. But I'm with you. I think that it will, at the end of the day, um, in years from now, we're going to look back and say, well, we kind of got that first experience with COVID-19, and now everything is being able to be done, and a lot of things, I shouldn't say everything, but a lot of things are able to be done from the home environment. So it'll be interesting to watch as that progresses. Video conferencing has certainly been a fascinating case study in all of this, and I know that you've tried to keep up to date with the latest and greatest technologies on your
Right.
end so that we can put our podcast together. And thus far,
Yes.
the one that has been stable and the one that has held everything together has been on the Zoom format. So we
Yep.
continue to use, and I've loved what they've done in terms of their security upgrades, because nothing is better than watching a campaign video and then all of a sudden, boom, naked people because somebody
Uh-huh.
hacked into it, just put their screen in full.
Right.
It was it, it was the funnest campaign story I've ever covered, from home.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah.
But that being said, it has taken and has gone up at leaps and bounds. Leaps and bounds brings us into our next topic: glasses, nerds,
Yep.
video games.
Yes.
Gaming nerds out there have seen it now. Another trailer for another Assassin's Creed.
Yes. And I
Take it
like how
away.
you're avoiding saying the name. Valhalla is the
I
name
can't
of
say it. It
Assassin's
the
Creed.
the A and the L and the H too close together makes me go
I
bleh.
don't know why you have such a hard time, but
Valhalla.
yes,
I
Assassin's
can't say it.
Creed Valhalla is the new game coming out. They just a couple days ago released the brand new teaser trailer for it. It is not just it's not a gameplay trailer. It is a teaser trailer. It's to get you hyped on the game. It is Vikings. It is 800 the ninth century in England and Norway. So you're playing as a Viking, and they are trying to invade England, and you're getting set up, and the teaser trailer was pretty badass. It was just this massive wall of people fighting each other on a battlefield, and then
I thought it was a movie when I first saw it. To be honest
I
with
mean,
you,
it could be. It could be.
graphics were that good.
Right. Felt like Braveheart a little bit. Obviously, a little more Viking, but yeah. I mean, it's gonna be an interesting game. The only thing I thought watching it, like they didn't do really the Assassin's Creed reveal until like the last 5 seconds of it, so it was really hard. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't feel like it's Assassin's Creed, and I don't want to be that guy. But um, like just from watching the teaser trailer, obviously we haven't seen any gameplay yet, which we will in a few short days. They will be doing a gameplay reveal. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like I just that was the hard thing for me because like I other than in the last 5 seconds, I mean, I kind of spoiler for the teaser trailer, which is kind of weird, but you do see the hidden blade come out. Uh, so it like that they do. I mean, it's tied in that way, but kind of the rest of it, it's kind of hard to tell that it's actually an Assassin's Creed game. It could just be a Viking game for all. I mean, a Viking fighting game.
Without seeing a gameplay trailer and without seeing gameplay modes and models in action and knowing
Right.
just what we have seen and trying to be hypothetical and speculate,
Yeah.
there has been more Assassin's Creeds than now that's what I call musics that have come out. And this is my personal opinion. Do you
Right.
think maybe it's a shift on their part to try to see if they can latch on to a different market? Maybe they don't like the puzzles and the the way that the game has been set up in years past, and maybe they're looking for a different market. Do you think the gameplay is going to be that dramatically different?
Um, I think it's. I mean, it's dramatically different from AC1, obviously, but they've kind of been the last few games. They've kind of been going this way anyway. They kind of started implementing these types of things into Odyssey, or not into Origins, which was Egypt, and then I think they really pushed it. Which I'm going to be honest here, I did not play Odyssey, so I didn't really see how this all played out. But I've been reading about it, and they said they kind of were switching it when they made Odyssey, so they're already kind of changing how the formula works anyway. So it's not really a departure if they do go in a different direction or tie in elements, but also go in a like kind of move it in a different direction. So it wouldn't be that surprising if they do kind of change it over because I mean, like I say, they're probably going for a wider audience. I mean, that's what any good video game company wants to do. They want the biggest audience possible, so they're gonna change up the formula and figure out how what the widest amount of people will want to play and what elements they'll want to put in there to get that audience. So I think yeah, they'll definitely be changing it over.
And let's be brutally honest. I mean, and this again is just my personal opinion.
Right.
You're talking to a guy that religiously plays sports games and doesn't get into a whole lot of other video games. I was a fan of Assassin's Creed. I would say for maybe the first four, but after a while, it gets to feeling as if you're literally playing the same game with different
Right.
characters in different historical settings, but the schematics of everything, your motions, it's the exact same game. If you beat it once, you've beaten it 29 times.
Right. And I mean, and that's what kind of what happens with franchises. I mean, in general, I mean, video games, movies. I mean, it's that's kind of what unfortunately you get stuck in one space, and that's why they get a lot of pushback. I mean, that's why people are saying things. It's like like me. I looking at it, it doesn't feel like Assassin's Creed, but I mean, it is. It's still Assassin's Creed. It's still part of the franchise. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, people are gonna play it. I mean, they're gonna sell a lot of them. I know that because they sold a lot of Odyssey, so people are still looking for it. But yeah, I mean, you can get. I mean, the franchise fatigue is a real thing. I mean, we talked about it a lot when Call of Duty had 50 million versions, but it's still here. People are still playing it. They've reinvented it a few times, so I mean, yeah, it does happen. But the companies are gonna keep doing it as long as they're making money.
And what Assassin's Creed's done well is they capitalize on the historical time frame that's popular right now, if you
Yeah,
will. I mean, for instance, go to Netflix right now and look at the top 10 shows. 3 of them are Viking related.
right.
So they're cashing in on the Vicraze, the skull factor, if you will, and capitalizing on that. So that's one area that they've done really well. I'll be interested to see how it develops. Be interested to see some of the gameplay trailers on it before I make a final determination.
Right.
I'm guessing can we embed those trailers, those teaser trailers, and things like that on our website? You're the tech
Oh
expert.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes, we can definitely do that.
He's like, oh yeah, and oh by the way, we've already done it.
I was gonna have it playing in the background of the video, but I didn't get that far. I
That's
didn't
okay.
wake up soon enough.
It's still early at
Yeah,
11:15 in the morning.
yeah,
Yeah. He's Dustin. I'm Tyson. It's the Watchful Penguin podcast. Again, coming up in just a little bit, we are going to get to a great friend of mine in the radio broadcasting industry. We're going to be talking country music on today's show, and a wealth of knowledge in that country music industry from Country 96. Derek Beck will be joining us in just a little bit. But before we get to that, speaking of the music industry, let's just
uh,
spend a couple quick minutes on this topic because you have been exploring one of our favorite pastime activities collectively
yes,
is going out and doing karaoke.
yeah,
We can't do that right now, at least in
right.
terms of getting everybody together in one spot. You have been exploring options for the next 2 minutes and 30 seconds. What have you found out? I'm putting a hard time stamp on
Oh,
this.
okay,
What have you
okay.
found out when it comes to doing karaoke from home?
Good to know. So I've looked at a lot because I was thinking about all the bars that can't be open to have karaoke. So I mean, and Zoom is actually a big part of this. I because you can kind of allow people to have video or not, and you can have a waiting room. Um, there's a lot of things we can do with Zoom, but specifically, I've been looking at Twitch broadcasting. Twitch actually has a game that integrates with your stream called Twitch Sings. So I've been looking at that, and they've got a huge library of music and songs to sing. And the game element of it feels a lot like Rock Band or Guitar Hero when you had the band, the full band,
Mm-hmm.
like the singing elements especially because it gives you the pitch that you're supposed to hit. So that's where the like the gamification of that part comes in. But I think this is a real good way to fill in and use it to do karaoke. Or I mean, we can figure out some ways to like just use the classic style of karaoke video. But I mean, yeah, using these video conferencing apps, I think we can do something fun with karaoke.
I need to have, before we start that project, like a processor in the microphone to add a little bit of bass, because I like to drop it down like 2 or 3 decibels before we sing. So karaoke from home. He's exploring options. We might have more details on that by our next podcast on how you can participate, because we might do something like a stupid game where we want you to be the Simon Cowells of the world. We want you to judge who won, because this just in, coming up on stupid games here in just a quick, we're going to talk about how I'm 0-1 and I'm not excited about it, but that's coming your way a little bit later on the show, after we talk with a good friend of mine on Conversations with Cool People, which is coming up next. You're on the Watchful Penguin podcast after a word from Anchor. And welcome back to the Watchful Penguin podcast. Tyson Nevronic, Dustin Southworth with you here as we continue to roll along here on what I would call episode 1, but it's sort of episode 2, our pilot and our announcement that we were coming back turned into like an entire podcast. So with that, episode 2, we enter in our first guest that we have on the show, and I am delighted to welcome him aboard. And it's sort of a returning the favor, if you will, as he has a podcast called Chasing Parked Cars, and for some reason, I don't know if there was nobody else answered the phone, but I was on his guest list here this past week. So looking forward to welcoming in my good buddy, good broadcast buddy. His name is Derek Beck. If you are native to the central Nebraska area, no doubt you have heard and have on your presets the country radio giant Country 96. He is a big part of that. He is also a award winner for Row Magazine, which is big in the country music industry. He provides the big Nashville sound to central Nebraska. Ladies and gentlemen, Derek Beck. Derek, I appreciate the time, brother.
Can I have you introduce me every time? That was awesome.
Thanks, man, and no, delighted to have you on the show. We've been friends for several years now, been broadcast buddies, whether that be on the sports front or on the radio dial. And I can say this, having been on your team and off your team, it is better to be on Team Derek Beck than off Team Derek Beck, because you do such a wonderful job.
I don't even know what that means. There is no Team Derek. You know what I love? I just love to be a part of everybody's team. So, the career path that we've chose, radio is pretty competitive when it comes to who you work for, who you don't work for, who you compete against. I throw all that stuff out the window. I don't really care. I got a lot of great buddies that work for our competitors, and I've just tried to always be super friendly. But it would be a lie to say that does not exist. Totally.
And super friendly is the way that I've heard you described most often by radio personnel here, at least in the state of Nebraska, and even outside the state here, as you do have some connections and are able to bring in, again, that Nashville sound. You make yearly trips out to the mecca of the country music capital. But let's start with country music and kind of what has been going on recently. Derek, this is the time, typically, 1st of May, where we start to see those artists come out with their big summer hits that are going to be number ones by Memorial Day. I'm sure that COVID-19 and the quarantine and staying at home has had an effect on that. What's been your stance? What's been your view of what's been going on in the country music world?
Well, it has been crazy. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you're spot on. Spring is new release time. Country music is weird compared to a lot of different other formats. I know we tinker in rock and hip hop and all that kind of stuff. It used to be, when I got into radio 20 plus years ago, the Alan Jacksons and the Garth Brooks, they were releasing 4 or 5 songs every year. If they put out an album that had 10 or 12 songs on it, they probably released half of them to radio, and if you were good, they probably all were, top 20, top 10 hits, maybe not all number ones. That gets a little blown out of proportion, I think, whether or not a song hit number one. It doesn't even really matter, especially in today's world where you have streams and every other platform to get heard. But in today's country music world, holy smokes, if you get 2 songs out a year, it was great. We've got songs that we played on our stations, and it's not because of me. It's just the way the format works in 2020. You've got songs that'll be on a chart, I'm not kidding, 45, 46 weeks out of the year. So, I mean, I hear people say all the time, well, man, you play that song over and over and over and over and over again. I'm like, well, tell the big stations that matter in the Denver and Atlanta's and all those big mecca towns to hurry up a little bit. I mean, I like to, my philosophy in music has always been to get on it first and get off of it first. But you still have to play that trend a little bit where if a song is still 30 weeks in, is still getting played a lot and people are still requesting it, you still got to play it. So definitely weird on that front. You mentioned the COVID-19 take. Spring is a time when a lot of new albums come out. We had just returned from Nashville mid-February, I guess. I go to, it's an industry deal. It's called Country Radio Seminar. And basically that's where your record labels and whatnot, they want to highlight a lot of the new talent that they are going to be putting out. I remember John Party many years ago, before he was anybody, they were spotlighting him at this thing. And I mean, they had him at every after party you could shake a stick at because they wanted him rubbing elbows and getting to know all these programmers that were hopefully going to play him at one point. So we had just gotten back from Nashville, and believe it or not, I was sick the entire time that I was there. You want to know what my symptoms were? It's all the symptoms of this stupid COVID thing. I felt awful, and actually took a few days off when I got back to Nebraska and whatnot. And then it was not even a month later that I think the rest of the world knew what this thing was, and we were shutting things down. And it has shut down Nashville totally, pretty much. You look at Lower Broadway, that's where all the bars and the honky-tonks are. That's where the Ryman Auditorium is, which was the original Grand Ole Opry House downtown. That's where the Country Music Hall of Fame is. That's where Bridgestone Arena is, where the hockey team plays, the Predators. All those buildings are shut down. And, I mean, that's a tourism mecca these days in Nashville. Right. And all these artists are just locked in their house. A great example, though, of the bright side of this, maybe Luke Combs just yesterday, as we record your podcast, released a brand new song, and it wasn't a song that was on his album. It was a song that he did during one of his Facebook Lives a couple weeks ago called 6 Feet Apart, and he'd written it like earlier in that day. He's like, what the heck? I'm going to play this on my Facebook Live. He played it. The video went viral because of that song. I made the comment on the radio the next morning. I'm like, you got to be a fool if you think that he isn't going into the studio in the next couple of days. They're going to rip that thing out and they're going to release it in the next month. And I'll be darned, yesterday they released it, and it was the most added song in country radio across the country. And this song's not going to take long to go to number one. So it will be, and Luke Combs has been kind of the anti current wave that country music is rolling. You know, you talk about those songs that are on the charts for 30 or 40 weeks. Not a Luke Combs song. 20 weeks in a cloud of dust. He is such a breath of fresh air because he is the one guy that is releasing 3 or 4. I mean, he has now released, I think this will be his 7th single, and all 6 of the previous songs have went straight to number 1. And this is a guy that went to Nashville his first go around. They told him that he was too fat and that he was too scruffy. He didn't have the look. And I mean, I think he just went back to the drawing board, gave him a giant middle finger, and he's like, well, I'm going to release Hurricane, his first single. He released it on his own, independently. It jumped up to the chart into the 20s, and then all of a sudden they pull the song nationwide. They're like, hey, don't play that anymore. And we're all like, what? Don't play it anymore. Well, the reason they didn't want us to play it anymore was that a record label had finally signed and inked a deal with him, and they wanted to re-release that song so that they could get credit for the spins and everything else that went along with it. So it did end up going to number 1, but Luke Combs is a heck of a guy, and he's one of the guys that you love in country music because he sounds country, he looks country, and people are buying his records. Even, you know, I joke, Alex, my co-host on our podcast that we do, he's pretty traditional, likes that real retro 90s country. just absolutely despises Florida Georgia Line, hates Luke Bryan, and Luke Combs is everything that those guys aren't, and that's actually good for country music because they need to get back to their roots. The Florida Georgia Lines need to be like Taylor Swift. You want to cut pop songs, release them to the pop stations. Florida Georgia Line needs to be played on 103.1, not on 96.5. Just my 2 cents. Not that anybody cares.
And for those that don't know, 103.1 is the top 40 pop station that we have within our network of stations. Derek Beck again joining us, country radio brilliance here on our Watch the Penguin podcast. You mentioned a little bit about the pop crossover, and that's kind of one area I do want to touch up on a little because it was addressed in Nashville this past winter when you were there in terms of female artists and female exposure. And when you talk about Taylor Swift's and Maren Morris's and Casey Musgraves, Cassidy Pope's, a lot of these that start off as country that go over to pop because that's where the money is at for them, why is it so difficult, or how is Luke Combs a jackpot in all of this in being able to make it whilst sticking the middle finger? How difficult is it for the artist to break into the charts?
It's super hard. I mean, it is really, really hard. One of the biggest parts about my job, and it's a little bit different than our other stations in our group, and it was just by luck, I guess, when I got into radio 100 years ago. The little radio station that I worked at, they reported to a little magazine. It was in Los Angeles. It's called New Music Weekly, and that magazine's still around, actually. And when I say we report our spins. So when I say that, I have a report, and I tell these magazines that, okay, I'm spinning Luke Combs 34 times every single week. And then they add all those spins up, and that's how they figure out who's got the number 1 or number 20 or number 50 song in the country. So if you're ever wondering how the charts work, that's how it works. They're asking all these radio stations across the country, how many times are you spinning this song? And then they do the math every week. I mean, it's literally that simple. Now, things have changed a little bit with streaming, the Spotify's, and all that kind of stuff, because some of these charts do take some of that information into account too. And that's a whole nother can of worms, to be honest with you. But you bring up what makes Luke Combs the jackpot. Demo. I think it's that simple. The country music listener, I don't think has changed a whole lot over the years. I think the record companies in their minds have thought that it has. I think they want that listener to get younger and younger and younger. And you can see that by the groups that they're putting out and the type of music that they're putting out, that they want that demographic to be younger. Not necessarily the case. That farmer and that rancher, that blue collar worker that, liked Garth Brooks in the 90s still likes Garth Brooks in 2020. And you want to know what? His kids like that stuff too. And that's why that format is so popular. I think Luke Combs is genuinely just a regular guy that people can relate to. And I think that makes it simple. You talk about some of the other artists in the format. I think they're just not very easily relatable, whether it's their look or their sound. I think there's a lot of probably reasons for that. But I mean, knowing what your demographic is, knowing who you are, and filling the gap between those two things, that's the ticket. That's the moneymaker. That's how you develop a fan base and all that kind of stuff. And then you alluded to the female thing. Oh my God. That has been a highly talked about thing in country music. There were several sessions at that Nashville seminar that I was at. And I don't have the answer to it. I guess I don't look at it that way when I program. My philosophy is pretty simple. I either like the song or I don't like the song. I might not like your voice, but it has nothing to do with you being a female or a male. I usually know 35 seconds into a song, I like it or I don't like it. And we play a lot of females on our country stations. And even, we have the ability when we're scheduling music, to play a lot of fast songs in a row, or not to play females back to back. That's kind of been a thing that's happened, especially in the big cities. Oh my God, it was taboo to play two females back to back. Oh my God, what's going to happen? I don't know. If they're good, play them. Who cares? It doesn't matter. And so I've totally taken that filter out when I schedule music. That's not even one of the things that it takes into consideration. My biggest thing when I program, honestly, is tempo. Especially with new type of music stations, I want to keep the tempo up. So I don't want to hear 3 slow songs back to back, or even 2. But that doesn't mean those aren't good songs. I just don't want to hear them back to back. So programming has changed a lot since I started. I've been in radio since 1998, and I've been programming since 2000. So I feel like I got a good grasp on what's going on, and things have really changed. But it's an exciting time to be in radio right now too, especially kind of with this coronavirus thing. The localness and the people that are maybe tuning in for other reasons it's a great reason to have the radio on, and that just helps us when we're programming music or we're doing news or whatever. I think our listenership is up big time in the last month and a half.
He's Derek Beck again, joining us here on the Wattsville Penguin podcast. We can talk country music and talk about the radio industry for hours on end. As far as your programming side of things, you mentioned the human element touch that you put into things. Is that an area when it comes to programming that lacks when you get into the bigger markets, the bigger cities? Are they more analytics based and strictly on the numbers? Do we think that there's maybe a human element lacking to the success of some artists?
100%, totally would agree with that. I mean, that's what's funny though. You say that, Tyson, and then I go, yeah, but they have 10 people doing my one job, but the computers are doing all the work for the most part. So it's just really interesting to be honest with you. There's, I think of iHeartMedia. A lot of people familiar with the iHeartRadio app and all that stuff. Well, it's Clear Channel. They've got a new name now, but I mean, they own 1,600 radio stations in the country. And they just laid off a few thousand people just a couple of months ago. So, I mean, the answer's right there in front of you. They have found, and they're not the only company, that's just the one that I'm going to mention. They're finding ways to not use people and use more computers, and even on their streaming apps. I mean, it's more music, less talk. I mean, there are no jocks on most of their web channels, and maybe I'm just the traditionalist, I guess, but I want to hear that DJ say it's sunny and 75 in San Francisco on the Golden Gate Bridge. I want to hear that. So,
all right, we built this city reference in there. I like it.
There you go.
I like it. Obvious question. We talked about your career in radio and what you do with our country station. For me, it's interesting that you bring out the sunny and 65 on the Golden Gate Bridge. Jefferson Starships, We Built the City was one of the reasons that I wanted to get into radio. I heard that part. I cranked that part up every single time. I wanted to be that guy. How did you get your start?
I see Dustin shaking his head. Do you hate that song?
No, well, it's not the best song in the world, no.
He probably either A, hates the song, or B, gets tired of me telling that story. But
well, it's funny. I think all of us radio guys tell the same story, though. I've told that story. I was the same way, man. I wore that cassette tape out. I had a cup. Now I have it on CD. I've got it on digital. Love that song. Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. Casey Kasem on a Saturday morning. That's what I grew up on. So, Bob Kingsley. I want to hear those voices, and that's the big thing. And it's not just country radio. Pick a format. Is there really a standout voice in 2020? I think there's a couple. I think Bobby Bones has really established himself not just in country radio, but being on American Idol with Seacrest and all those guys. But it used to be, man, you could name all the big DJs across the country, and I don't think you can do that anymore.
Right.
Derek Beck again joining us here on the Watchful Penguin podcast. We talked a little bit about the COVID-19, how it's affected the music industry in terms of releasing songs and getting artist exposure. Do you see, and I mentioned it a little bit on your Chasing Park Cars podcast, that we're living in history right now. Do you foresee a shakeup of the sound of country music after we get through COVID?
Gosh, that is a great question. I really don't know the answer to that. It really, it's funny we compare that to radio, bring radio up again. Radio is going to have everything to say about how that goes, because we're either going to play it or we're not going to play it. I think it will be great. Pick your format, doesn't matter. I think it'll be great for the format to hear some of the songs that get written from going through this. And you can look back at the different eras throughout music. You can look back at post-World War II and Vietnam. God, the music was great. Why was it great? It was great because they had something to write about. It brought up feelings. It brought up passion, emotions. Those are the things that make great songs. So, yeah, I guess to answer your question, I mean, I do think radio will have everything to do with it, but the probability that there's going to be some really killer songs in the next year to 10 years, based on what we're going through right now, I think it's highly probable we'll have some really great music coming out.
Do you think
Dustin,
actually, I did. Do you think it'll kind of change how they release? You mentioned Luke Combs doing it on his Facebook Live, like his original song. Do you think it'll kind of change how they do that at all?
I think it will. I think it has. I think it's kind of already started just a little bit, and then this one hits you right between the eyes with right. What he did. You know, yeah. Keith Urban, Blake Shelton on the country side are kind of doing that already. They both and those guys, those are established artists that can kind of do what they want at this point in their careers too. But I think we'll start to see this a little bit more. They're doing more instead of doing full-blown albums. Albums are becoming something you're going to stop seeing albums. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. When we were buying tapes and CDs, you needed to fill all the time on that. You weren't going to leave any wasted space on a 60-minute cassette tape or an 80-minute compact disc. You weren't going to waste that time with just filler stuff. And there was a lot of that because, like I said earlier, I mean, they might release 4 or 5 songs. Nowadays, holy crap, Luke Bryan has an album out. He released like 3 songs off the whole stupid album. So, I mean, he just didn't release any songs. And when I bring Keith Urban and Blake Shelton up, those guys are going, well, we're going to do EPs, or we're just totally going to do singles. We're not going to do albums anymore. An EP is basically half an album. It's usually about 4 to 6 songs, and they will release all of them at some point. But Keith Urban is totally doing this. He's going, I write a song, instead of waiting 2 years to put it on an album and wait to release the album, and then maybe it's the 3rd single off that album, shoot, you're two years into that process. Keith Urban now, and Keith Urban's releasing a lot of songs right now, actually, back to back. The reason why, he's writing them, he's cutting them, he's releasing them. He's writing them, he's cutting them, he's releasing them. Instead of putting a whole thing together, is he gets a good one, he's like, I want to put that out. God's Country was that way for Blake Shelton, which has ended up being the biggest song of Blake Shelton's career. He helped co-write it. He released it like a month after they wrote the song, and it blows up. Song of the Year last year. I think you'll see a lot of this. The Luke Combs is a great example of the industry at least being willing, I think, to go, man, that's a great song. It's timely. We need to get that out yesterday. Lady Antebellum did the same thing in the last week. They had a song out. It was on the charts for the last month and a half or so. It's kind of a slow song. They were on that Disney sing-along program 2 weeks ago. They pulled a song that they just had in waiting. They played it. The next day, it was #1 on iTunes, all genre, and they're like, screw that last song. Let's release this one. It's number 25 on the charts already. So I think the industry is a lot more willing to throw out the textbook, if you will, and start reinventing themselves. And that's good for the music industry, and that's good for the consumer, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dustin, anything else for Derek while we got him on the line?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Well, Derek, I would be remiss of my duties on our podcast here on the Watchful Penguin if I didn't let you then cross-promote your podcast here on the Watchful Penguin, Chasing Parked Cars. Details, please.
Yeah, it's my buddy Alex and I. Alex is a school teacher at Northwest High School. It's kind of funny. So you had done color commentary for me during Northwest football many years ago. When you left for greener grasses, I had to fill that spot. I filled it with head coach Kevin Stein's dad for a year, which was great. And then we had to find somebody after that. Alex has been the PA guy for Northwest for many years.
Wow.
So the question just kind of got asked in a pinch one day for a road game. Hey, would you want to go do color commentary? He'd never done it before. And so we rode up together to Columbus to do this game, and we drove back, and we just talked the whole way there. We talked during the game. We talked all the way back, and really just formed a friendship that day. And so, yeah, Alex, we don't even pay Alex most of the time. He just wants to be a part of the show, which is great to have somebody that just wants to be on the air with you. So, yeah, Alex Hull and and he came up with the name Chasing Parked Cars. Actually, I think Mike Sorensen, the athletic director at Northwest, that's kind of one of his catchphrases. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're chasing parked cars again," and that's where the name came up. So we do a little A for Alex, D for Derek. We do a little A through D every week. A is for anything. B is for backyards and barbecues. And you were on the podcast yesterday. We really didn't have anything good for that segment yesterday. C is for country music because we share that in common. And then D is wrap it up pretty much. So we have a good time. And you can find us on Facebook. Just type in Chasing Parked Cars. There's a link to the podcast and all that stuff. We haven't done very many either. I think the one you joined us for is number 4. We've been trying to have a guest every week. We had interviewed a couple of coaches at Northwest already. So I'm like, well, we've done your coworkers. Let's do one of my coworkers. So you were next. And we were joking because Danny Woodhead is on the wish list for future guests. And you didn't want to follow or be right before Danny Woodhead.
Right. We need to have a little separation between I don't know, one of the greatest football players ever to come through the state of Nebraska and then myself. Let's get a little bit of buffer there. But it was a blast to be on your show, and I cannot thank you enough for being a part of our podcast here on the Watchful Penguin. Like I said, I could talk about the radio industry and the music industry, whether it's country, rock, or whatever. And I will leave you with this fun fact about Derek Beck. I am not a big country music fan. That has been well documented. There is a reason on my 8 radio presets in my car that one of them is set to Country 96, and that reason solely is for Derek Beck, so that I can listen to him on my way in and to and fro on my morning shows as well. Derek Beck, Country 96, he does such a phenomenal job. Congratulations on everything that you have accomplished so far in your radio career. The accolades are too many to mention here on the show, but it's been a blast to have you as a part of our program, and it's a blast to have you on the team.
Well, thanks for having me, man. And hey, the world is better because of guys like you. So keep talking, keep sharing the love and the word and all that good stuff. And we'll get through it together. And peace out. Thanks for having me.
Once again, we use Anchor as a great opportunity here on the Watchful Penguin podcast to spread this podcast out to the masses. Dustin Southworth, Tyson Nevronic, Watchful Penguin, as it is now time for part 3 of the Watchful Penguin podcast. After that great segment there, Conversations with Cool People, Derek Beck certainly falls into that category of cool people. And we look forward to now getting into stupid games.
Yes. We played some Jackbox Party Pack, which is probably one of our favorite games to do with multiple people because we can do it over long distances. And
it's not something that buffers.
Right. Yeah. No. You just one person streams it and everybody else can just play, and it's perfect. I mean, that they built it like that. That was what the whole point of that was. So, but yeah, we should talk about how I won the game. Although it took us 3
Yeah, if
three
you watch
rounds
the
to
video
do. But
portion, if you watch the video portion of what we're about to play, it's rather lengthy for what typically is about a 5-minute mini game.
should be.
Trivia Murder Party was the original thing on like Jackbox Party Pack 4 that we had both grown to kind of like because it was semi-entertaining. It was also quick, so we could play a lot of different games within the span of 30 minutes.
Right.
There's Trivia Murder Party 2, which is now out on, is it 6
Yep.
now?
Yep.
For the party pack, and so we decided to. I think we both got our first taste of this version, the second version, and it's a little bit harder because we both sucked at it.
Yeah, it didn't go so well. It did not go so well. We're not very good at the trivia part. The mini games were pretty fun though within the murder party trivia.
We could have stupid games, yeah, based on their mini games,
I wish they would release that. That would be kind of cool.
right? So what happens in Trivia Murder Party 2 is if you both die before you get to the killing floor,
Which is level 5. You have to hit level 5.
five
five
levels. You got to
questions.
answer 5 questions. And if you both die before you get to the final stage, you just have to start over.
Yeah.
Like, there are no winners. And so it took us 3 versions. And by the way, in the third overtime, we still both died. They just felt really bad for us and sent one person to the final stage.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And I just happen to have more money.
That was him. So he gets to go first. Now, what happens is you're allowed to catch up, swap places with the other person before they can reach the finish line.
Right.
Finish line, excuse me.
Because the person behind gets an extra point or extra answer
bonus
to be able to catch up, so they can
higher odds.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, in previous version number 1, I would have been the outright winner. I would do what I always do. I play the game. I'm sort of like the tortoise in the hare race. I just take the cautious approach. I eventually, at the very last possible second, make the merge over to the left-hand side and pass Dustin for what should have been the win. But if you watch the video, as you see, nay, a fence at the finish line says you have to get all of the possibilities correct. You need to answer this question 100%. You can't.
Perfect.
It's like when you play pitch, and one of the rules that I think should be implemented, and it is not, in our family pitch games, which creates controversy and mayhem and family arguments that have been unresolved for 30 years. You should bid to win in pitch. And this is sort of a bid to win mentality. You need to get 100%. It needs to be a perfect shot if you're going to advance on it and be declared the winner. So I did not answer it perfectly. Dustin does. Dustin makes the pass. Dustin is inaugural stupid game winner of the Watchful Penguin podcast.
Yes, want to know, baby.
And that hurts so bad that we're probably going to play again tonight just so I can have an opportunity to completely redeem myself.
Sure, you think so. Yeah, so we are going to live stream tonight. I don't know if we'd ever decided on a time for that, but...
Good point. Let's just round up and let's call it 7 o'clock Central.
Okay, 7 o'clock Central.
I'm giving you now 6 hours to put this podcast out so we can get the word out to our people.
Cool.
So good on that.
Yeah.
6 hours to upload a 90-minute video.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
You'll see the video on the video version. You'll hear us talking about it on the audio version. It was a lot of fun, and we look forward to it. Let's go over the deets quickly. How can they stream? How are we going to do this?
So I think we talked about doing it on Facebook Live, but I kind of want to keep all of our streaming on Twitch. That way it's all under one umbrella. So we'll actually, here's an idea. So we're going to go live on Facebook for 5 minutes or so to kind of introduce it and tell people to come play with us. And then we're going to go live on Twitch to actually stream Jackbox. and then we'll be playing. You can join us. You play from any phone. You just go to
Or
the
tablet.
_watchful_penguin on twitch.tv, and you find us, and then you just follow along and play on your device, and you just go to jackbox.tv once you're there, and you type in the code, and you can join us, or you can join our audience. So even if you miss the boat on getting into the game, you'll still be able to play along with us. So yeah,
Once again, the Watchful Penguin podcast makes decisions, and I love this about our show, is we literally make stuff up on the fly while we're doing the show. It's like, okay, how are we going to do this? Okay, well, here's an idea. You know what? Dustin's like, I've made the executive decision. You're going to go live on Facebook 5 minutes before 7 o'clock. Okay, great. This is how we roll on the Watchful Penguin podcast. It's why our slogan is just rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anything we missed on today's show?
I can't think of anything. I mean, we covered it all pretty well. Yeah, that's
We're solving world problems.
yeah, something like that.
He's Dustin. I'm Tyson. We give a huge thank you to Derek Beck for joining us on Cool Conversations with a Cool Person, and we give a big thank you to you for listening and following along on our various platforms. Check it out and continue to give us feedback. We love your feedback, love the interaction. Also, make sure and check out my buddy's podcast, Chasing Parked Cars was what it was titled. You can find that on Facebook as well. We thank you for listening. We hope you have yourselves a great rest of your weekend, and we look forward to seeing you guys tonight.
Absolutely. Yes, we do.
Bye-bye.